Welcome back to Forging a Minecraft Mod, lecture number 5, Entities. Before the break, we made a simple spaceship that could move up and down when you sat in it. It also had different textures depending if we spawned a charged one or not. But if you have a spaceship, I would think that it would make sense, to be able to drop bombs, don't you think? I think that's the case. I think that makes sense. So let's get starting dropping some bombs. But we have a problem. Dropping the bomb would obviously be handled on the server side because the server needs to keep track on all the entities. So we can't do it on the client side. But the server side won't know anything about if we press a specific key. I want to drop the bomb if I hit a specific key on my keyboard. So how do we do this? Well, the client will have to tell the server, I want to drop a bomb, and then the server needs to obey and drop the bomb. We're going to use something that we set up in the very first lecture. We're going to use the packet handler right at the bottom here. So we're going to use the packet handler to send a packet, which is a packet of data, a bunch of bytes, from the client side to the server side. Then the server will receive this packet and see, alright, you want to spawn a bomb at this location, I'm going to spawn it for you. But before we get to the packet handler itself, we'll have to add some code to the entity here, to the spaceship. And what I want to do is say, well, if we're on the client side, send some information. Like that. This is, however, not going to send information all the time. That would be silly. But it's going to be a method that controls the information that is being sent. So here we go. Private void send information. And I want this to happen if you if you clicked on a button that you just clicked on the button itself. And I'm going to do so by getting if a button has been pressed. I'm going to use the default one, those you already have, yeah, you can use like any key you want. It's done a bit differently, but not a lot. So what I want to do here is get Minecraft.getMinecraft. That's going to give me the Minecraft instance. Then what I want to do is to get game settings. So that's going to control all your hotkeys, the key bindings and so on. And then we can get a few different things, for instance key bind. And in my when I prepare this, I thought, drop would be, that drop would make sense. You want to drop the bomb, but if you had an item in your hand, you would drop that, so that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to use the jump one instead. So if you hit spacebar by default, we're going to drop a bomb. There we go. So I'm just going to check if that's pressed. But I don't want to drop this bomb if, each tick that I hold the spacebar down. Right? That wouldn't make sense. You would spam bombs and everything would be in trouble. If you click it multiple times, you would still spam bombs. But if you try to drop one, you don't drop 55 because you're slow. Oh, 55. It wouldn't be 55. So what I want to do here is store the old state, private boolean last pressed state, like that. And we can simply just do last pressed state equals state, like that. So I'll save that in the end. But in between here, I want to make sure that that we just press this button, that it's down, that the state is true. Then I want to make sure that the last pressed state is false. If these two are the case, that means that we just pressed this button. It's down, but it wasn't down. Okay. There you go. And then what I also want to make sure that this is a charged ship. That means that we can't drop bombs in the ordinary ships, but if we charge up and get one red ship, we can drop bombs with it. Then finally, we need to make something that might not be that obvious right away, but when you hear it, it's very, very obvious. If you click a button to drop it, and the ship is charged, we need to check one more thing. We need to make sure that you're actually sitting in this ship. Otherwise, as soon as you try to jump, all the ships around you will drop bombs. Not just for you on the client side, but we're going to send it to the server side, and therefore the server will drop bombs for each ship that exists when you try to jump. That doesn't make any sense, right? So what we want to do is to make sure that it's ridden by entity. The entity that is riding the spaceship is the player. How do we get the player? Well, we can use Minecraft.getMinecraft, so that's the Minecraft instance, and refer to the player. This is not just any player, it's the player you control. Even on your client, when you have multiple players in the world, there will be multiple players for you on the client to be able to render them and all sorts of things. But there's just one player that you do control. On the server side, however, we can't refer to the player. There's nothing called the player on the server side, because, well, which player would that be? There are tons of players there that is being controlled remotely, but on the client we have one player that is actually controlled by you. So we can get that quite easily. So we just check if you clicked your jump key and the entity that is riding here is, well, you, the one you control. So that means that if the one you control is the one that clicked, then you want to drop it. So inside here we want to drop the bomb. Well, we want to tell the server to drop the bomb. How do we do that? Well, we could do like packet handler, and then what I want to do, I've wrote that down, what I wanted to call it, give me a sec. What I want to do is just tell it to packet handler.send ship packet, like that. This does obviously not exist. I don't see why it would. But I want to do something. I want to tell the packet handler, can you send some packet here for me? And that's totally fine. Let's create this method. Right, so now we're in the packet handler that I showed you here. That one that we created the very first lecture. We set up so the packet handler here would receive each and every packet on a specific channel. We can take a look on that. Up here, this is the mod file, the mod class, and we can see here network mod channels mod information dot channel. So that's the channel we're operating at. So we've done this, we prepared this, the first lecture, so it was going to come when we actually used it. So in this lecture here we're actually using the packet handler, we're using the proxies, and we're using the instance, and all of those we set up in the very first lecture. So they are useful, we'll see that when you want to bomb things. So let's go back to the packet handler, like that, and we don't need to have send ship packet here. As you can see, it's static, but I think it makes sense for the packet handler to send a packet as well, because it's set up to receive it. Okay, so what do we need to do when we want to send a packet? Well, we need to do a few different things. First of all, I'm going to set up some helper things here. Byte array output stream, byte stream, like that. And what these things are, in the end, we'll just get a output stream. In the end, we'll just get a very simple byte array, like byte data equals blah blah blah, you know, like this. And that's what we'll get in the end, and we can define it like that, but it's going to be quite, well, troublesome. If you have an integer that's 4 bytes, we need to convert that into bytes, blah blah blah. Then we can just use these things that I'm going to use to make it easier for us. Okay, I'm going to use this first one, the java.io, the normal Java one. There you go. That's the one we need. And then I want another one, data output stream, data stream, and then I'm going to give it a byte stream. Okay, so what are these things? I take the first one here as well. So basically what I create is a stream of bytes. That's the first one. It's just a new stream of bytes. We don't give it anything. This one is going to store a stream of bytes, which means that in the end we can get a byte array from it. Okay. Then we use this data output stream to allow us to write things to the byte stream, and that's why we create a new data output stream with the parameter byte stream. So we create something that can write to this stream here, and then from that stream, in the end, we can get a lot of bytes. Okay, that's everything you need to know for now. And what we then can use the data stream for is to write information in a similar way that we did before. You remember when we wrote and read when we synchronized using entity additional spawn data. So now I can write information here, and it can be sort of anything at all. What I want to do, I want to send a packet to the server that, well, this entity here wants to drop a bomb. Okay, it wants to drop a bomb. Which entity? Well, the spaceship that we get here. So it would make sense to send along which spaceship we have. But we can't really just, well, write spaceship and give it a ship. That obviously doesn't exist. I'm going to call it ship instead. That's shorter. Like this. That obviously doesn't work. That would just be weird if it did. But what we can do is write an integer. That's easy. Okay, so what integer would we use? Well, each and every entity do have a unique ID. So we can use entity ID. This ID is, well, not only unique, it is the same on the client and the server. So if we write the ID on the client side and then get the ID on the server side, then the server, well, can think, oh right, it's entity 112305. I know which one that is, and then he can get the ship again and then tell the ship to drop a bomb. So that's quite clever. To just write the ID and then we can use it. However, we'll get an error here, and the reason why is because, well, when we write to the data stream here, we might get an IO exception. So I'm just going to catch that. Catch IO exception. And, you know, just system.error.append, so we can add an error here instead of just printing it out normally. Fail to send spaceship drop packet, something like that. There you go, and then we need to import that. So this is the first step that we do. We do datastream.writeInt and write the entity ID there. And that's everything I want to write. It doesn't really make sense to just write this, because when we receive it later on up here on packet data, we will have a problem. Not really now, but if we want to send multiple things, maybe we want to have one if we want to drop a normal bomb, maybe we want to have one if we want to drop a fully, well, a nuke of some sort, maybe we want another one if we want to just use our well, maybe we want to drop ourselves, we want to use the parachutes to drop out and activate the parachute, and I don't know, but maybe we want to do different things. Then, well, we need to send that as well. So then we would maybe do data stream.write int or write byte maybe, and send along an ID. So we send sort of when we send this ship packet, we send along a header ID. Then we can do different things depending on the ID. Here we maybe have weapon type, and we maybe actually also have data stream.write byte like packet type. We might want to have one packet for this spaceship. We might want to have another one for something with a wand itself. We might want to have something for a tent. You know, we might want to have a ton of different things. We need to be able to detect what we're sending here. We can't just send a ship if we want to do multiple things. We don't know what we want to do with this ship. So remember, send along all the information we need, and it makes a lot of sense to have like a header ID to know what we're sending. Right. So you can write as many things that you want here, but don't write unnecessary things, because that's just going to be a lot of annoying data that you need to send along that you don't need. So send along as much information you need, but not more than you need. But at the moment, I'm just going to have one type of packet, so I'm not going to bother about sending like an ID to the server and so on. But remember, if you have multiple packets, which you probably will, give it an ID as well. Multiple headers of different types, maybe. Right, so what do I need now? Well, I need to write this code here, but we're not sending it, so we might want to send it first. We're not doing anything, but we have one line to send it, so we can receive it. We can refer to something called the packet dispatcher and send packet, and we can look at this. We can send it in many different ways. Send a packet to all around, send packet to all in dimensions, send packet to all players, send packet to players, and packet to server. So all of these first four are basically used if you want to send information from the server to the client. So we want to send that to different players. To all around, that's all players nearby, all the players in the particular dimension, all players, well, exactly every player that do exist. Send the packet to a specific player. But what we want to do, we don't want to send it to the client. We want to send it from the we want to send it from the client to the server, not from the server to the client. And therefore, send a packet to server is the one we want. So we have one method to send it to the server and 4 methods to send it to players on their clients. There you go. And we need a packet to send. How do we get this packet? Well, we can use the packet dispatcher for that as well. Packet dispatcher there, and get packet. What do we need to give it is 2 things. One string of some sort and one array of data. Well, and 1 byte array of data. And how do we get this? Well, like I said, we can refer to the byte stream that we have been writing to and just do 2 byte array. That's going to give us all the data we need. So why didn't we just specify this byte array right away? Well, we're currently just writing an int, but this int is 4 bytes. We would have to convert this to 4 different bytes. We would have to split it in 4 different pieces and put those into 4 different bytes. Now we just do write int, and it's going to do that for us. If we write a lot of other things, it's going to be even easier, because we can just do, well, more things. That data stream dot write string. You know, you can just write everything we want, and it's just going to convert everything to bytes. But like I said, we could convert it ourselves, but I don't see a reason to do so. What do we want to give it here, this string? Well, what we want to give it is the channel. Which channel do we want to send this on? So I'm just going to refer to modinformation.channel, because that's the channel we've specified to listen to. Therefore, when we send this packet, packet dispatcher.send a packet, when we send this packet, we're going to receive it here. Now we will receive it on the server side. Send packet to server. So the packet will be received here, and we can do things with it. What do we want to do? Well, first of all, I want to create something called byte array data input reader equals byte streams dot new data input. Okay, so the packet itself has some data, and that's the data we specified down here. That byte array. That byte array will be received. Let's import that one thing in there. Control Shift O. So this is that byte array that we sent. We will receive that, and we can read that. But at the moment, we will have like 4 different bytes. And well, which integer is this? So it's the same thing. It's just going to be easier if we do byte array data input reader and create it like so. Then we'll get something that we can read it easier with. So I can do int entity id equals reader dot read int. Remember to read it in the same order you wrote it. So there you go. But of course, if you wanted to do this like with different IDs and stuff, then we could do like maybe we do byte packet ID equals reader dot read byte, and then we can do like if packet ID equals 0, then we want to read the entity ID there. Otherwise, we might want to do if packet ID equals 1, we might want to, I don't know, read the coordinates like reader dot read int y equals, yeah, you know, and so on. So depending on maybe a header called packet ID, which I misspelled, but never mind, we might want to do different things. So remember, you don't have one packet handler for one packet. You have it for all your packets. So so yeah, you just write like a header. We can send along a header here, you know, and then we need to read it. It might be a bit tricky to work with it first before you get used to it, but there's not too much to it. But at the moment we'll make a very simple one. We just send the ID of the entity and then we read it here. No headers with information, extra information or anything, just that one. So what do we do now? We have the ID of this entity. Well, we need to do a few things. Take a look here. We'll get the player, but we don't get the entity of the player. We just get sort of the player, whatever that is. And that's an interface used for networking, as you can see here. It's a Forge mod loader thing. It's not really a real player, but we can cast that into a entity. And depending on if we're on the client or on the server, we have to do it differently. So otherwise we'll do an entity player MP, I think, if we are on the client side. But since I know we'll only receive this on the server, I can do it easier, so I don't have to do like instance of and check it. So the player is the one that sent it to us, the information, or it might be the player 2 if we send it to a client. So it depends in which direction we send it. So why do I want to get the entity player here? I don't actually want to do anything with the player. I might want to do that. I might want to blow the player up because it tried to drop a bomb inside the docking station. I can check that here. Did the player drop a bomb in the docking station? Okay, kill him. Yeah, I guess you could do that. But the only reason why I want to get a player at the moment is actually so we can get the world object. You know, from each entity that we do have, we can get a world object. Okay, here we go. And entity and yeah, I get a comment now in the chat that, well, you should check that he's actually in the ship. Yes, to make things work as good as possible, you should make sure that the player that sent it is actually in the ship. Otherwise, someone can use a hacked client to send the information anyway and control that someone is dropping it somewhere else. And, well, we can do so. I didn't plan to do that, but yeah, we can totally do so. Because that's how you're supposed to do it, and I just thought, well, let's skip that to save some time. But it's quite easy, so let's do it like this. Entity ID, there you go. So what I'm doing here is import entity, and we want a Minecraft one. Okay, so entity like that, and then we do entity player.worldObj, and then we use this method called getEntityById, and we use entity ID like that. What do we need to do then? Well, we need to make sure that we actually found this entity. We should do, but it's not something that must be true. Instance of entity spaceship, like that. Instance of, like that. And just to make sure, we can make that proper check as well, like entity dot written by entity equals entity player, like that. So just to make sure that the one that sent this is actually the one sitting in it. So I didn't plan to add this, but it's very easy to do. Just, it's good to have. So when we send the information from the client side, we make sure that the player is actually sitting in the ship. However, if someone starts to modify the mod, like hack into the client and change things, then they can send the packet anyway. So the server actually have to make sure that that the player is actually sitting there. So the server needs to verify everything, and yeah, it's probably good to show that. I plan to just skip it, but that would be silly actually. So make sure that we have an entity, that the entity is a spaceship, and that the entity riding the spaceship is the player. Okay, if this is the case, that we found that, then we get the spaceship and do drop. I want to drop this bomb here. This method does not exist, but obviously we're going to create it. There we go. So all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but from the code that we made, we have a method here that sends a packet to the server. And then we do a lot of things there, but in the end, this method here is going to be called on the server side once the one writing it hits the jump key, which is usually space. How do we want to drop this? How do we drop a bomb? Really? Well, we obviously have to create an entity for that. So new class, and that entity bomb, and extends entity like that, and the Minecraft version of it, of course, net.minecraft.entity.entity. Sweet. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to add a constructor, and I'm going to ask Eclipse to do that for me, like that. And that's the only thing I need there. And then of course I need to add these unimplemented methods. I'm not going to use any of these. Oops, I removed too much there. I'm not going to use any of these, but I still need to implement them. Nothing forces me to actually do anything with them, but they need to be there. What I'm going to do is, when this is being created, I want to set motion y equals minus 0.6. What does this do? Well, basically, when this bomb is being created, I want it to get a velocity downward, so it's going to fall down. Otherwise it wouldn't. There's nothing called like default gravity. You have to specify that yourself, how things works. Obviously, I will have the same motion all the time now. It would make a bit more sense to have it accelerate, but I'm just going to have a standard velocity there, so minus 0.6. If you wanted to, you can just increase that all the time, so you get an acceleration. So it starts at 0 and then it just increases. Okay. Is that everything? Well, we need to tell it to move as well, so public void on update. Super.onUpdate there. And what I want to do here is well, set position X, and just for completeness, like I said before, I want to move it in with the other motions as well, even though we're not modifying them ourselves, but maybe some other maybe some other entity is trying to move this bomb around. So yeah, let's allow it to, like that. So we just move it depending on the three motions, the motions in the three different dimensions. Right. So what we need to do now is, well, not really too much, but think about it. If we drop a bomb, something should happen when it hits the ground, right? Otherwise it would be a very lame bomb. It just falls into the void and ends there, because it has no collision. I haven't defined any collision with this one. And let's fix that. So just do it on the server. You should know that part. Just control things on the server, unless we use it for simulation like that. So the actual explosion should only be handled on the server side. And what I want to make sure is that we have an air block at the explosion. You will see in just a second why, if you haven't already guessed why I want an air block where we want to explode. It's quite simple. Just because that means that we're not inside the ground. And why is that important? You'll see. But more importantly, or maybe it's easier to understand, we want to make sure that we don't have an air block just below us. Why is that the case? Well, if we don't have an air block just below us, that means that we are going to hit the ground. I mean, come on! Eclipse is moving my cursor around. I don't like that. Like that. And plus y. -1, that means the block below us. And finally, and pause. See, like that. There we go. Okay. So, what are you doing? Sorry. There you go. So what I'm doing now is two things. I make sure that where the bomb is currently at, we have an air block. Where the bomb is not, we don't have an air block, like the block below it, that means that we're currently in the air, but we won't be in the air in the next block we hit. So what do we want to do then? Well, we obviously want to remove this bomb. The bomb has hit the ground, remove it. Okay, so far so good. What's the other thing we want to do? Well, we want to cause an explosion. But just causing an explosion is, well, that's no fun. What we want to do is, well, of course, create, well, you should know this. Come on, guess. What I want to do here is obviously to spawn the bomb from the last lecture, the block that spread and then exploded, right? So instead of just exploding, I want to place that there, and that's the whole reason why I want to make sure that there's an air block where the bomb is at the moment. Otherwise, if there were no air block there, I wouldn't be able to place it. Well, I would be able to place it, but then I would remove the block that already exists there, which would be a bit weird. You drop it like a bedrock, and you remove the bedrock to place a bomb there, and you know. So there we go. So this is the bomb. On this other side, then, well, when it reaches the ground, place a bomb there. And actually, just to make this go a bit smoother, I'm actually going to go into the block bomb here and modify, not the block bomb, sorry, in the tile entity for the bomb, wherever that is. Here you go, sorry about that. I want to make it spread a bit less, yes, so, well, we can have some fun without having to worry about too many explosions. Right, so what do we need to do now when we have created this entity bomb that is being dropped down to the ground and then spawning a block? Well, let's go to the entity spaceship. We obviously need to drop this. How do we spawn a bomb? Well, drop a bomb. Well, we've done that before when we worked with the wand. And well, how do we do that? Well, we make a new instance and then we place it in the world. Entity bomb equals new entity bomb world object, like so, and then bomb.position x equals position x. You know, I'm just going to place this bomb at the same position we will have the spaceship. That's not going to be a danger at all. You know why? Well, the bomb does not hit entities. We haven't given it any code to do so, so it's totally fine. You might want to place it a bit further down, or maybe at a specific location, like where you have your hatchet where you drop the bombs, or whatever. But at the moment I'm just going to place it at the very same location, and then it's going to start falling. And we also need to spawn it into the world, like that. Create it, spawn it, and if you want to, do things in between. We have forgotten about one thing, or well, I haven't done it yet, maybe you haven't forgotten. We need to register it. Entity registry.register mod entity. Give it the class here, entity bomb.class, a name for it, well, a key sort of, and entity bomb will do. The ID, it has to be unique. We're using 0 already, so use 1. Steve's example.instance, like that. Then it's a matter of using the tracking range. I'm going to go with 80 up to frequency 3. Send velocity update false. There's no reason to send any velocity updates to the client side, because we'll set the velocity to minus 0.6 to start with, and then it's just going to, well, end with that. There you go. Okay. So now it's just a matter of running this. Here you go. As you might have seen, realized, I'm not registering any rendering code for this. So obviously, if you wanted to make this look fancy, then what you would do would be to, well, have a nice looking bomb falling, and then it would spawn the bomb block at the ground still. Okay, so now if I hit space, look at that. It's working. Boom! And it's, there you go. So when I hit space, the information that are hit space is going to be sent to the server side. When the server side receives it, it's going to spawn a bomb at the top there where we have the spaceship. When the bomb hits the ground, it's going to spawn a bomb block instead, and then that's going to spread like it did in the last lecture. Isn't that nice? It's also going to make sure that we're actually in a red ship, yes, because that's how we define it. So now we're going to move up, and I'm going to hit space. It's not going to do anything. There you go. But this is not everything for this lecture. This lecture might be a bit longer than the normal ones, and I'm sorry if I can't fit it in the normal times. But we have a few more things to cover, and I think it's going to be fun. So the last thing I want to implement is an ammunition count. So you shouldn't be able to drop how many bombs you want. You have an ammunition, and then you might have to reload it. I don't know. And how do we do this? I'm not just going to implement it for you to have some ammunition counts. We're going to implement it to see something. For instance, what we can use the entity init for. But first of all, let's set an ammunition count here. Private, not in boolean, private int ammunition, like that. And I'm going to set it to 10 to start with. I think that makes sense. So we have 10 at this, in the beginning. And then I want to have, let's put it here, public int, what do we want? Well, get ammunition. I think that makes sense. And we just return ammunition. And then I want another one, public, here you go, public void set ammunition. And obviously we need the value here, derp. There you go. And ammunition. I can't spell. Ammunition equals value there. So nothing special, just a getter and a setter here. Two methods to set and get the ammunition here. Okay. Then what we want is to save these ones. So set ammunition. I don't know why I have trouble spelling this. Compound dot get byte. I think it's enough to save it as a byte, and ammo will do fine there as the key there. And then I obviously want to write it as well, so compound dot set byte, and then we do ammo byte and get ammunition. There you go. Oops, forgot that. So far nothing special. We have two methods, one to set, one to get, and then we read it, so we get it when the world loads, and we set it when the world should be saved. When we drop the bomb, we obviously need to make sure that we have any ammunition. So get ammunition, that should be greater than 0. That means that, well, we do have a bomb to drop, and then we do get ammunition -1, so that's the bombs afterwards, and obviously we need to set that. Set ammunition like that. So make sure that we do have a bomb when we want to drop it. Get ammunition should be greater than 0, and then we set ammunition equals the ammunition -1. That means that we have decreased by 1. This is on the server side when we drop it. Maybe we don't want to send the packet to the server when we don't have any bombs. We might want to display an error message. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So when we get into here, I want to say check if get ammunition equals 0, then I want to do something else. Otherwise, if we actually do have any bombs, then we can just drop that by sending the packet to the server. So what do I want to do here? Well, we could open some interface and tell the player, well, do you want to add some extra bombs here, blah blah blah. But this is not a course about interfaces, that's the next one. So the only thing, well, that we can do, or that I will do at least, is Minecraft.get Minecraft.dplayer. So that, if you remember, this is the player that we're currently controlling. This is only on the client side, so it's totally fine. And I'm going to add a chat message for that user. But like I said, we can do a lot of things here. We can change the texture depending on the ammunition. You know, we can do multiple things. But I'm just going to well, you don't have any ammunition. ammunition left. Okay, why is this so special, this ammunition thing? I said I would show you something new, but we haven't got anything new at the moment. Well, the thing that is new is how we're going to fix the problem that we do have. You might have realized that we do have a problem. What's the problem? Well, I want to send the information here if we want to drop a bomb or not. The ammunition, where do we get that from? Well, we store it on up here, so the client will know about that. Will the client decrease the amount? No, it's done on the server side. We could of course copy this code here and put it inside here. Not there, here. That's very bad, however. What if the server tells us, well, I failed to drop this bomb? Maybe you're not allowed to drop a bomb if you're in the docking station. So then the server would check, well, is the ship in the docking station? Oh, right, it is, don't drop the bomb. Then the client will still decrease it. Another problem would be, well, we wouldn't synchronize it when we loaded the world. Of course, we could use entity additional spawn data for that, but still, we don't know if the ship is actually going to drop it. We can check if we think we're going to drop it, and then we can tell it to drop it. We don't know if the ship is for sure going to drop the bomb. The server might say, no, don't drop it. We're in the docking station. That's a good example, I think. So we're in the ship's docking station. We're not allowed to drop bombs here, and therefore the server says, no, don't drop a bomb, and therefore the client can't simulate it on its side. So we want these to be synchronized. We want the server to control the amount of ammunition we have, but we want the client to know about it. How do we do that? Well, we can use packets sending data back and forth, you know. For entities, not for entities, for blocks, we used the metadata to make some simple synchronization, so we didn't have to do that ourselves. And we have something for the entities that we can use called data watchers. So what are these data watchers? Well, like I said, they are basically a way of very easily synchronize data back and forth. And what I'm going to do is remove this variable altogether. We don't need the ammunition field there. We're going to get 2 errors, and this is the good thing, that we only get 2, because I refer to ammunition in get ammunition and in set ammunition, but nowhere else. I'm using set ammunition, get ammunition, I'm using set and get down here, and this is how you're supposed to code things. We can check, well, we can change how we save the ammunition without having to bother about it anywhere else but in these 2 get and set methods. That's how we roll. So why did I remove it? Like I said, I want to use a data watcher, and the way we do that is by referring to the data watcher of this entity here. I want to add an object, and I give it an ID and a value. The value is its default value, so I'm just going to use 10 here. Like that. What's going on, Eclipse? There you go. Okay, so the ID here has to be somewhere between 0 and 31, so we only have 32 different values to work with. The value can be of a few different types. It can be a short, it can be a byte, it can be an int, it can be an item stack, and a string, I think. The item stack, however, won't send along information like enchantments and things like that. It will only give us the ID and the amount and the damage value. So what is this? Which IDs can we have? Why am I using 15? Well, there's no real reason why I would use just, well, exactly 15. We have from 0 to 31, and we can use these as we want to. However, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 3, I think, those 4 are already used by the entity itself. You know, we extend entity. So those are already occupied, so don't refer to those. You can take a closer look to see exactly which ones are used. But the other ones we can use exactly like we want, and these are unique for our instance of the entity. So even though like the boat might be using some things, the minecart is using like 16 to 20 or something like that, or it might be using 15 as well. Even though that's the case, we can still use them because, well, this is not a minecart. We can use the ID 15 anyways. So if we do this, if we add an object when it's being created and then return, how do we get the ammunition? Well, what we do is just data watcher dot get watchable object, and here we have the 5 different types that we can use. And since I'm saving a byte here, it assumes that, well, I need to read a byte, otherwise I will get errors. And I just give it the ID like so. How do I change this value? Well, I just do data watcher dot set object watched. No, that's not the right thing. No, that's something else, sorry. We need to have the update object. There you go. So we give it the ID and the value. There we go. So what's going on? Well, instead of having a normal field here, I have something called a data watcher. Getting the object like that, I have an ID. I set it like this. I have an ID. Of course, I also need to init that one in entity init like so. Okay. So what does it do? Well, like I've described, if I set this value on the server side, it's going to be synchronized on the client side. So it's a value that is synchronized between the client and the server. And we can read it from both sides. It's pretty nice. And since when we load things, when the server loads, read entity from MBT, since I set the ammunition using the data watcher up here, it's going to be synchronized to the client side. The client side will know it. If we change the amount of ammunition that we have when we drop a bomb, the client will know about it, just because it's being synchronized to the client. So we have had additional spawn data, which is totally fine. It can synchronize a lot of data. It can synchronize whatever we want when it's being spawned. If we want to do it, well, while things are going on, like all the time, then we need to use a data watcher. But like we saw, the data watcher is a bit restricted. We can only send 32, well, we can only have 32 values, and some are already occupied, and we can only do it in 5 different types. So it's not like we have, well, we only use the identity spawn data, or we only use the data watchers. We use them for different things. Data watchers synchronize it all the time, but a bit more restricted. Identity spawn data, use it only at the beginning when it's being spawned, but you can save a lot of data. So let's get going up here, and I'm going to try to drop a bomb. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, I don't have any ammunition left. And the reason why that happens is because I'm trying to read a value that I didn't set the last time. You know, I'm reading how much ammunition was saved that we had, but since I didn't save that last time, we had, well, the default would be 0. And that's only happening because, well, I didn't have the code for saving it before, and now all of a sudden I'm assuming I can read it. So that's just because we're in the middle of a coding process. So now I have this charged again, so I can get a new ship, and well, I can go in there. And now if I hit space, I'm going to drop a bomb like that. And as you can see, it's spreading out, and it's killing everything. And if I drop 10 bombs, the client will know about that and say you don't have any ammunition left. Sweet. So the client knows about it, the server knows about it, we don't have to bother about the synchronization there, and we can bomb the world and all the sheep. Sweet. Let's see what we all been talking about this lecture. Right, so we started with some basic entities. How do you create an entity? Well, public class and then your name, and then we just extend entity like everything else, just extend the base class. We don't really do much here in this base entity. We need, of course, a constructor where we send along the world to the superclass, the entity itself. And then we need 3 of these methods: the entity init, the read entity from MBT, and write entity to MBT. And we have seen how we can use all of these. The entity init is used for data watchers, the read entity and write entity is for saving and reading data when the server closes and loads again. We also need to register a entity registry.register mod entity, and we give it a class, a name, a unique ID. This ID is unique for your mod, so you can just go 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. Then you give it the mod itself, and then a few different values. We have 83 and true here. 80 is how far we can track it. Then we have how often it should be updated. And finally, we should send the velocity to the client side as well. Then if we want to render it, we need to register a renderer for it, and we do so by rendering registry.register entity rendering handler. We need to give it an entity, well, the class itself, the entity spaceship.class, and also the renderer to render this. However, I didn't go through exactly how this worked, because this is not a part of this course. It's a part of the course to be able to add different renderers and so on, but you don't need to be able to create them yourself. That's all about well, models and stuff, which we will be discussing in course number 5, an anatomy of a Minecraft model. If you're taking that course as well, you will be learning about the renderer and models then. And if we wanted to spawn this ship, if we want to spawn an entity, we need to do two things. We need to create the instance, and then we want to put it into the world using world.spawnEntity in world. Of course, we might want to do things in between there where we change its position or whatever. We might want to set if it's charged or not. We might want to, I don't know, set its facing, you know, its rotation. We can do a lot of things there, but the two important parts are create a new instance and put it in the world. If we want, we can use entity additional spawn data, and we saw that it was very nice to have. We need two methods then, the write spawn data and read spawn data. And if we write things in the write spawn data, we do so on the server side, so we can tell the server to write some extra information. Then when the client side loads, it will read this extra information and we can use it. Remember to save it as the correct type, so we use write boolean, and then we need to use read boolean, and also put these in the correct order. So if you want to say multiple things and read multiple things, do it in the same order. So if you want to write a boolean and then a byte, to read a boolean and then a byte, not in the reversed order. Then we had data watchers. If we wanted to synchronize things all the time, the ID had to be unique. You can't use the same for multiple information. Of course, you can use the same multiple times to refer to it multiple times. And the ID from 0 to 31 there, even though 0, 1, 2, 3 are already occupied. I think that might have been changed. They might use a few more. Yes, take a look to make sure. Then we can use datawatcher.update object to update it, get watchable object byte to get it because it's a byte, and we need in the entity init to add it to begin with. But these are a bit more restricted than the iEntity additional spawn data, but instead they are synchronized all the time. So that's pretty awesome. And by all the time, I don't mean that they are sent back and forth all the time. What I mean with all the time is as soon as they see that you have a new information there, it's going to be sent. Alright, and then we had a packet handler, which is not something unique to entities, but we use it here, and it's a part of this course. So to send a packet, what we did was to write the entity ID here to the data stream, and then we could send that along. The only important part that we have here is really packet dispatcher.send a packet to server, and then we get a packet with the correct channel and the byte array. However, to make things much easier, we get the byte array from a byte stream, so we can write it easier by just doing datastream.write_end spaceship.entity_ID. Of course, we also need a try catch to make sure that we not get any IO exceptions here. It has been removed in this slide to show you the important part and get some more room for that. So remember, you need a try catch as well, otherwise you will get a syntax error, so it will be very easy to see. And then when we receive it, the important part here is on packet data, and we have those methods. We prepare those in lecture 1. And what we get is basically an array of bytes, but to make this easier, like when we sent it, we can create a byte array data input, and I call it reader here, and now we can just do reader.readInt to convert the 4 first bytes to an integer. And then of course we will use entity ID for something. And that's about it for this this lecture. That was a bit longer. I'm sorry about that. We have the questions and exercises, like always. Questions to see if you've learned what this lecture is all about, and exercises to practice the things you've learned. Further explorations is for you if you want to continue exploring a bit. We have 2 different ones there today, where one is to actually improve the ship so you can move it around. Now it can just move up and down, but for you to control it to move around. But that's further exploration, so that does not have any solution supplied, but the questions will have answer. Well, they do have answers in the document, as do the exercises, or well, they have possible solutions to them. So that's a bit about it. This has been Forging a Minecraft Mod, lecture number 5, Entities. I've been VSWE, and I hope you enjoyed it. In the next and last lecture of this course, we'll talk about a few different things like world generation, sounds and particles and so on. So I hope to meet you then. Goodbye.